Neoconservative is out of the UK. Bernard Lewis, who is the father of Samuel Huntington, who wrote books that influenced the Bush administration. So the Bush, Cheney, those are like sort of the arch neocons, but it's actually out of the UK from Bernard Lewis. And then they are also influenced by Leo Strauss, who was influenced by Hitler. But they also have an influence.
What's that? The guy that made jeans?
Strauss. No.
It's a joke. Levi Strauss.
Leo Strauss. Gotcha.
It's a joke. It was a dungaree joke.
Jeans were made actually, I think, originally for communist purposes.
No.
The suits were actually.
Blue jeans was like American. It was like mining and.
Well, they wanted to have a standard for like in a company town, like everybody had the same outfit. So I'm not saying
Like
I'm not saying they make profits. I'm just saying like a company town, you could say it's.
Levi Strauss invented blue jeans. And it was in the United States. Denim work pants.
But it was made by a Jewish person,
in San Francisco.
Company town.
We made everything. What are you kidding me?
You mean in the U.S. it was like company towns?
Like a company town is not really a capitalist institution. Like they make money, but like you have to buy everything from the company town. So
I disagree with that. I mean, if there's a barren wasteland and a company's like, we need to import a bunch of people and there's no industry here, then they have to create means by which people can choose to buy food.
But it's not classical libertarian free market if everybody has to shop at the company town. It might be the...
But again, the point is, if no town exists and they build it, they're sure it's like a commissary.
There's no other options, right?
So I wouldn't call it communist.
Well...
It's called monopolistic.
Okay, but I mean, if you're a libertarian, monopolistic capitalism isn't classical libertarianism. Also,
again, so like if I personally have a private piece of land and I hire a bunch of people and they're like, hey, there's no restaurants anywhere. What do we eat? And I go, all right, I guess I'll have the crew come and open up a restaurant, but you got to pay for the food. Is that communism?
I mean, again, monopoly capitalism isn't really.
But hold on, this is not an issue of there's no competition. Like it's an issue.
It is. There is no.
No. I mean, it's an issue of there's no competition, not forcing people to do anything. So is the alternative? I just go, you know what, guys? I'm going to open a restaurant where only I get to eat. You're actually not allowed to eat it because I don't want to be a communist.
Right, but this is the same argument as to why people would own like an entire water supply. Right. So if you privatize water, then no one has a right to the water.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm saying there's a
company town could own the water.
Indeed. What right do you have to take it? That's communist.
It's not communist to have public municipalities.
Wait, what?
It's not.
I own a swath of land.
Right.
And I invite you to come work on it.
Right.
I have to now relinquish my right to the water body on my property?
No, I'm saying if you're going to create a society or civilization and you have... If you own the entirety of
we're talking
the
about
water
company
supply,
towns. We're talking about company towns.
Well, that's the beginning of a civilization, right? It's no different.
Right. So the point you're bringing up is that if I own, let's say, 100 acres, and I have a grain mill on it, and then I can't produce that much, so a handful of people are like, "Howdy, good sir. We could increase the output of the grain if you let us come." And I say, "All right, you know what? I'll pay you guys a share of the grain that you mill. Thank you for voluntarily coming and offering this service." They then say, there's nowhere to eat for miles. And I go, well, unfortunately, if I were to create something by which you could purchase food, that would be communism. So no.
It's not communism.
So then if I as the landowner and the company owner then say, I will open a restaurant on the property for you, from which you can purchase goods, that's the beginning of communism.
So, but you're describing a situation of a small microcosm where there's no competition.
Like a company town.
Right, where there's no competition. Doesn't capitalism require competition?
And who's stopping people from opening a restaurant across the street?
Well, you would if you have a company.
No. If I own property and
you said monopoly capitalism, you would be then stopping the competition in a monopoly capitalist situation.
No. We're talking about a company town, right? Mm-hmm. Privately owned property.
Right.
So do they have to relinquish their water rights?
If it grows to a certain size where you begin to have competition...
That's literally communism.
No, it's not.
Seizing the assets from the private landowners.
No, I'm
literally going to a guy who owned land and says, there's too many people here now, so your water is ours. That's communism.
Sounds like communism to me, Jay.
If you grow to where you have a society that requires competition...
Then the people can seize your assets. Agreed. We're communists.
If there's but first of all, by the way, Marx was a libertarian, so it gets really.
Well, we're not talking about. I don't care about Marx.
Marx was a libertarian.
Well, you're accusing me of communism, then that.
No. I'm not accusing you. I'm arguing
that the argument is communist.
If your argument is private land ownership is void upon excess population that's literally a function of communism. That's what the Venezuelans did.
What you're describing is literally just communism itself. A company town is essentially the same as a communist setup. That's
It is not.
It is identical.
It's completely
absolutely
not.
I don't know. It's not.
So the people own the land?
In a company town?
In a company town, the people the people have if we're talking about the structures of communism by which there is a private committee, and there's two ways we can look at it. Your argument seems to fuse together both the authoritarian dictatorship components and the economic.
That's monopoly capitalism. That's what you're arguing
If
for.
the argument is people can voluntarily choose to come and work for a company, but there is no competition because there's no market reason for it, it's not communism. It's just a monopoly. But there's no oppression, and it doesn't matter because you can always choose to leave.
You can always choose to leave if you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Why did you go there?
In the West. And then,
Again, bro, I got to tell you, if the argument is I have no choice in my circumstances, therefore I should get public rights, it's literally
That's not what I said.
This guy's a communist.
So then leave, right? Why can't you
Well,
leave?
you can say that, but in a company town, especially like in situations when in the 1800s company towns were being set up, you didn't have the ability to just leave. Right?
Why not?
Well,
They're holding you at gunpoint?
I mean, well, if you're under a contract, you might have to be there.
Why did you sign the contract?
Well, again,
Is it communism to voluntarily enter into an agreement with a company?
Yeah, but you can call it voluntary. Even there's situations where something can be voluntary that you're actually locked into, right? I mean, I can.
You chose to enter into a contract.
If Amazon owns an entire area and it's the only place to work, then to say, well, you can move and you can do
certainly
that.
can.
Yeah, but it's still a form of wage slavery, right? You don't think there's such thing as wage
No, I don't.
slavery?
I think that's commie talk.
Well,
I think this is quite literally the arguments of Chavez and the arguments of Bernie Sanders. And my point that I often bring up to these leftists is, what's stopping you from just being a vagrant on federal land?
there's no difference.
You want from my system without input. And that is the component of the left that I disagree with.
No, your argument is a leftist argument, actually.
That
because
people should have to work.
Classical liberalism is a leftist position. You argue classical liberalism. That's a classic leftist position.
I'm arguing for merit-based capitalism is leftist.
Yes. Classical liberalism out of the Enlightenment.
That is incorrect.
No, out of the Enlightenment, classical liberalism is leftist.
The origin of the left is the left aisle in the French Revolution, referring to those who wanted a socialist, anti-monarchist, and the right wanted a top-down monarchist system. Okay, so your argument...
Not in the French Revolution, no.
It was the French Revolution. It was the left and the right.
The French Revolution wanted a constitutional monarchy on the right, and they wanted private property on the right. The leftists wanted communism.
Indeed.
In the French
so
Revolution.
when we say left and right in an economic sense, it refers to left meaning communal, right meaning closer to laissez-faire.
That's classical liberalism, which is against the traditional position of church and state.
Tim, this
and
is
the state.
This is the argument that Carl makes about liberalism now.
What's the argument?
Carl?
That Sargon of Akkad. This is I'm only saying that they're similar. That liberalism is actually a creation of the left, and that the ultimate form.
But I am not advocating for, in this circumstance, classical liberalism. I'm advocating for private rights.
Yeah. But the only point that I'm making is that his perspective is similar to Carl's perspective. You remember?
Sure, but that's immaterial to the argument being made.
It's not, because what you're saying that you're a socialist, you're a Marxist, but what I'm arguing would be the same as any medieval village philosophy, and they weren't Marxists or socialists back in the Middle Ages. Like if you went to a French village in the 1100s.
You're okay. Again, if the core of your argument is there's a private landowner, 20 years later, there's now 300 people working in this land. We now transfer the private rights from the landowner to a communal function.
Again, it's complex where you have something like the total ownership of something like a water supply, right?
Yep.
So when you have people that need that, that's different than a situation where Nestle's trying to buy an entire country's like private water supply.
So again, the issue is company towns. I have 100 acres. I own the body of water on that land. I invite a bunch of people to work. They say, I'll work here. I need a place to stay. I say, I'll build you a house. They say, where do I get food? I'll build a store. And they say, we need water. I say, I'll set up a water pump for you. That's communism?
Well, let's go to the rights then, because you're arguing that you have this right as a company owner, and I would agree. But on what basis do you have those rights? Because classical liberalism lost this whole argument when it came.
I don't know why you're bringing up classical liberalism. It's not.
That's your position.
No, it isn't. It
is. You're not aware of that, but it is your position.
No, you're throwing a blanket to encompass one point and combine it with a bunch of other points.
Because your arguments come out of that ethos, whether you know it or not. They're classical liberal
and
arguments.
You can have varying ideologies, mix and match. Let's make an argument on what I actually just said.
What's the basis for the rights?
The basis for the right to own private property? Well, now
in your ethos.
So I argue that the rights of man are derived from the will or the duties God bestows upon man. The requirements that we have from God, which is be fruitful and multiply, requires a handful of things for which we recognize in the United States that we allow other people to do. Fully recognizing that other groups have different ideas of what rights are. So I would argue rights are we need to be able to communicate, we need to be able to protect ourselves, and we need to be secure in our possessions. These are principal rights that we struggle to survive without. As the basis of this is look at communism in general in the Soviet Union, and when you don't have property rights, congratulations, look what happens. When you have mass monopolization and oligopoly, you get something similar. So in a simple sense, certainly it is my moral worldview and faith-based structures that define what I think someone has an inherent claim to. Progressives think you have an inherent claim to someone else's labor, which I would describe as slavery. So when it comes to the idea of private land ownership, the argument is fully understanding population expansion can come to a point where some people will never own land. But the idea is I need to be secure in my possessions to know and prepare for harsh winters, for instability, so that I can survive, so that I can be fruitful, and that I can multiply.
So you appeal to Genesis and God. What God? What principles of Genesis tell you that?
What are you talking about? I'm not a Christian.
Then how are you going to base this argument for rights in God?
What do you mean?
What God?
My God. My moral worldview.
So it's not a universal principle, it's just subjective?
Well, I think to a lot of people, they have a moral worldview and a philosophical understanding of some things and not others. And I base mine largely on, first, I would argue that perhaps there are greater moral philosophies than the Christian moral structures. We just don't know them yet. I would say historically, based upon what we have seen throughout the world and what we think we know, the Christian moral worldview has been dramatically superior to other moral structures. That being said, I'm not a Christian. And I don't believe in the faith structures they have. However, I have recognized that the moral structures of a Christian society tend to make life more successful for individuals, which is ultimately beneficial to the standard function of life, which is organizing organizing free energy into complex systems.
So just utilitarianism, because it works well. That was utilitarian.
You're wrong.
That's utilitarianism.
No.
You argue that it works well.
Jay, if you don't have an argument for what I said, stop trying to blanket it with something else as a straw man.
The argument was utilitarianism.
It's literally not. I did. We can talk about.
Why is it not utilitarian?
Well, we can talk about deontological ethos. We can talk about.
That has nothing to do with this.
No, indeed. My point is
enlightenment.
Instead of arguing what I said, you're arguing thing. I'm like, well, I gave you a specific outline.
Well, I'm giving you the problem with utilitarianism. I'm sorry that you're not aware of the problems with that position.
I'm sorry that you can't actually address what I told you.
I'm addressing it now, which is utilitarian arguments are pragmatic and it's not a justification.
Great. I'm not a utilitarian.
But you made a utilitarian argument.
A component of some, perhaps. Okay. So I don't believe in utilitarianism because that would sacrifice individuals.
Right.
Again, do you know what deontological moral ethos is?
Yeah, it's Kant.
Okay, great. So when you say something like you're utilitarian, and then I bring up we do not take immoral actions against an individual for the betterment of it. I know.
So why are you bringing up Kant?
You are making an argument. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, which I did not say.
You can have different types of utilitarianism.
Sure.
You don't even have to have that.
Instead of arguing the point I made.
It's a pragmatic point. You argued a pragmatic point.
Argue the point I made. Stop trying to blanket into other things.
How does pragmatism justify the rights? That's what you argued.
Okay. I made an argument about private land ownership as a benefit to human survival.
Right. Pragmatic.
Okay. So address what I said.
How does appealing to pragmatism...
a point. You make yours addressing what I said.
Yeah, that's not a justification. It's a bad argument.
Explain why.
Because appealing to things that work or pragmatism isn't a justification.
Explain why I'm wrong about the requirement of private land ownership for survival.
You grounded the right in utilitarianism and pragmatism, and I'm saying that's not a good justification. It's a bad argument.
So Explain
because
why.
anything that works could be all over the place. That could be subjective.
Indeed,
Benefits
that was
people
my
how?
point, in which I said there
And
are
it's
probably
subjective
moral
and it's relative.
structures that work better we have not discovered yet.
Then
So
it's
for
not
the
a
time
justification. So you
being-
don't know. So if it's a future thing that you haven't figured out yet, then you don't know right now that it would be a justification.
I understand certain principles of gravity and the speed at which things fall, but we don't know for sure how the structures work.
Then it wouldn't
We
work to
operate based on
justify.
probabilities.
Right. But that would not work to justify the rights as grounded in an unknown.
Then go jump off a building and see how it works for you.
You told me I have to, so I have to.
Go jump off a building and see how it works because you don't know gravity. It's a future thing you haven't figured out yet. We operate on probabilities based on what we think we know because we actually don't know.
But that doesn't ground a right, Tim. That's the point.
In
future probabilities, I asked you for the grounding for the right to private property.
So far, human history has proven private land ownership is beneficial to human existence.
That's a circular argument. It benefit. I'm asking how you know that it benefits and what does it mean to benefit? And you're saying because it was good.
It makes more of it.
That's a circular argument.
Why?
Well, why? Maybe making more of it's bad.
It's certainly not.
Okay, but why not? That's the point. That's why it's a circle.
Well, let's go back to the origin of what we think we know. Again, because everything is rooted in what we think we know, right? Some people think the Earth is flat. They're probably wrong, but honestly, I've not done the experiments myself to a great degree. I've just been in a plane. So if we go back to, again, the roots of science, we can take a look at a few things. Free energy tends to coalesce into complex systems, starting with the baser elements, or we can say quarks into particles, into atoms, into elements, into compounds. At some point, for some reason, you get gravity, likely because if you're familiar with our current understanding of gravity, mass creates attraction, etc. And this results in certain masses coming together. Eventually, you'll get something like a gas giant. You'll get something that compresses, then ignites fusion, and you get a sun. We get all this stuff. Then you get an Earth. Earth is the result of certain things slamming together, creating a bunch of complex elements through process of fusion, etc. And then at some point on Earth, for some reason, again, we don't really know for sure, these molecules and compounds start forming self-replicating proteins. Again, in modern science, the one thing we recognize is that there is greater entropy and limited entropy. Negative entropy can only exist in a slightly greater entropic system. But we do see free energy organizing into complex systems throughout the Earth and in the universe. That's what we monitor. Eventually, these complex systems ultimately become cellular organisms, single cells, then multicellular organisms, by which they then create complex organism systems. They create ecosystems. Now you've got a squirrel planting a nut, growing a tree. The tree then drops the food for the squirrel. And now you've got two distinct life forms that form a complex system within its own free energy. And then we get to the craziest part with humanity in the creation of abstract complex systems. That is, humans give names to things that don't exist anywhere in reality except in the energy transference between the mind and the vibrations between their mouths. So what we then see is the function of life is negative entropy within a larger entropic system. If we, as life, which are driven to reproduce and we typically associate all of those things with being good and enjoyable, like having kids, having Christmas morning, then we track, based on what we have seen throughout the earth, what is the most beneficial to that. There are a few answers for this. Islam could be one of them. They've certainly been massively successful, have lots of kids. We can take a look at Africa and say certainly that is beneficial. However, I would make the argument that the European cultures that developed science, space travel, cures for diseases, and then effectively colonized the whole planet, as well as the Asian cultures, have proven greatly that these moral worldviews lend themselves greater to the ectropic system within the entropy. And then we would say, well, it's maybe a toss-up, but I do think that the American Judeo-Christian or just Christian moral values, which include things like private property, have lended itself to the formation of complex systems, that is, life expansion and all the things that we cherish in the world, and thus, those are the things we aim for. Certainly, these things are very subjective, and some people believe other things. Some people might think it's better to watch the whole world burn because humans are a virus that spread like a plague. I don't believe that, but I do recognize I can't convince other people, nor do I know everything. So in the end, I ultimately conclude, if we want people to have families and have kids, private land ownership is probably the best thing we can do.
That's a good story, but it doesn't get to grounding or justification for why the right is actually something that is grounded in God. So storytelling is one thing.
Yeah, right. It's grounded in God because God commands us to be fruitful and multiply. And
But you don't accept that revelation, so it's just a thing
I do.
to
What do you
appeal
mean?
to. Well, you said you're not a Christian. You
Indeed.
think maybe
Just because you're not a Christian, you can't believe some things Christians believe?
Well, but I mean, you could do that, but it's not a consistent position, is all I'm saying.
It's a consistent position to believe that humans should be fruitful and multiply. I didn't argue that I believe Jesus died on the cross.
But to pick and choose elements of the worldview as a grounding for rights and private property is
something that everyone will do.
But that's another fallacy. The fact that people do it.
I
Yes.
don't have to
The fact that
confine
people do
myself to
things,
one of someone else's books.
These are fallacies.
It's
the
not.
fact that people do things doesn't have anything to do with whether that's correct or whether that's right.
I agree.
Then you're admitting it's a fallacy.
No, you're arguing that if I believe one thing from Christianity, I have to believe everything.
No, again, it was an argument about grounding the idea of private property. So maybe you're not familiar with what grounding is. That just means giving an epistemic justification for why that's the case. Good reasons, not just.
And so what's yours?
Well, I believe the Christian worldview, and I would defend that.
And now explain it.
But it's coherent, it's consistent.
Right, how?
Well, if you don't have that worldview, you are immediately caught in a bunch of contradictions.
Like what?
Like picking and choosing.
Like what?
Like picking and choosing, well, I'll believe this thing, and then I won't believe this thing. Well, that wouldn't be consistent.
What things are contradictory? What are you talking about?
Well, to say that we do it because it works is a contradiction.
Why?
Because it's a fallacy. Works to do what?
Explain your idea.
I explained the fallacy right there.
That's a fallacy.
Explaining it?
I don't have to. It is. You've contradicted yourself.
How?
Because that was a contradiction. It's paradoxical.
I didn't,
Well, you
I didn't appeal
said
to that.
one thing was and one thing wasn't, so you're wrong. I'm not going to elaborate.
I mean, I have been elaborating. So if you're characterizing my position as not elaborating, I've been very explicit.
So what
in
makes
what the fallacies
the
are.
Christian moral worldview on private land ownership?
Well, we're made in God's image, so we have the Ten Commandments. It has a position where you can't steal. So that's a basis for private property right there. But I can't just pick and choose.
You can't explain it.
What do you mean by explaining?
Like, is your answer just God said?
No, the answer is that your worldview is inconsistent and contradicts. That's a transcendental argument. That's the argument.
What is inconsistent about my worldview?
You gave no justification for why rights are a thing. You just said because it
literally
works.
did.
That's not a justification. It's a fallacy.
That I explain a
works.
function of existence.
That's not a good argument. Explaining functions.
That's not an argument at all.
Explaining functions.
That's not a good
doesn't get
argument.
You to justification.
That's a bad argument.
So you're just saying things.
Well, you're just saying things to me.
I'm explaining to you how it would work in a college class. If you took an epistemology class, you would be getting the same critiques.
Is your argument God wills it?
No.
Then what
the
is
argument is that the worldview as a whole is coherent and gives a justification and a grounding for the ethics and for these things.
And why explain the coherence of it?
Well, if the world is made by God, if we have ethics being made in the image of God based on the Ten Commandments, these kinds of things, then it makes sense why things are wrong and right.
Are there other religions?
Of course.
Do they think you are wrong?
That's a fallacy. It doesn't matter.
So why would
are there
your
people that don't
argument
believe
matter?
2 + 2 is 4?
Yeah, sure. My point
Okay,
is.
so does that have anything to do with Does that have anything to do with?
Let's
it being
try
4?
this before we actually go to the next segment. If your argument is I am right and other worldviews are just wrong and don't matter.
That's not what I argue. I argue they're contradictory.
Okay, I argue yours is contradictory and yours.
That's not an argument.
It is.
I gave you
It's
arguments.
the argument you gave to me.
I showed your contradiction because you said.
What's the contradiction?
You said that it's true because it works.
I didn't say it was true.
You said that that's why you believe it. That was.
I said
asked for
based on
justification.
what we think we know right now, and there may be better structures we discover in the future. This seems to be the best course of action for promoting human existence.
So it works. That's an it works argument.
I think that's an oversimplification of we act upon probabilities to do the best we can.
Okay, but again, none of those things work to ground why private property should be something everybody should accept.
I think my argument is it helps people survive better than any system we have.
So it works. That's a pragmatic argument, and that doesn't work to justify or ground the position.
Certainly does.
No, not.
Why should we use a fire hose to put out fires?
You keep thinking that working means that it's a justification. That's not what grounding is even asking for. It's a different type of question.
I understand, but you are not actually making any point at all other than God wills it.
That was not the argument. The argument was that the whole worldview.
Your argument is I have a Christian worldview that is.
It's a transcendental argument for the whole worldview.
And I have that same exact thing.
No, you didn't argue that at all.
I do.
You argued utilitarianism and pragmatism.
I argued that the structure of life is organizing free energy into complex systems.
But that doesn't tell me what I ought to do. That just says what is.
It indeed tells you what you ought to do.
Why? How is it universal?
You are to be fruitful and multiply.
Is that universal?
Indeed.
How?
That life procreates and creates more life.
Well, that's a universal claim, but you said that it's subjective to you. So
well,
how can it be universal?
I recognize that other people believe other things.
Mm-hmm. That's not what universal means. It just means, is it binding everywhere at all times?
You said it was subjective to me, and I said...
No, you said that.
I said, no, I recognize other people believe other things.
That's not what universal
means. And other
means.
people could perceive that as subjective.
Universal means it applies at all times, at all places, to all people.
Uh-huh.
They ought to do this.
They ought to do this.
Okay, what is the basis for the ought in your position?
The basis for why people should have children.
And have private property or whatever.
God wills it.
But you don't believe in God in any specific way, so how does that have any meaning?
I literally do believe in God.
But you said it's not the Christian God, it's just parts of Genesis.
Correct. I don't believe in a Christian God.
Okay, so what's the principle of this God?
The principle of God is largely a Christian God.
So you do, but don't. I don't get it. What?
Do you have the ability to understand that there are different faith structures?
Yeah.
You, by all means, you're allowed to say my religion is wrong.
But it has to be coherent.
But to argue that I don't have a
consistent?
religion, certainly my religion is consistent.
Okay. What is the basis for when you know when to pick from what text and which ones to reject?
I'd ask the same question of you.
Well, that's a that's a fallacy.
To ask you to define so you can explain
ask me the question I just asked you is a fallacy in debate, yeah.
Can you do it or no?
Yeah.
Oh, then
but I don't pick and choose, so I don't have that problem. I accept the totality of the Christian paradigm. So for me, it's not a problem to pick and choose. Orthodox.
So are there things in the Bible that you do not adhere to?
No.
Explain to me, like, there's modernization, correct?
Of what?
Of the Christian, I don't know, I guess moral structures, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. Like talk to me about Leviticus.
What about it? It's a typology.
Do you follow it? Are there things to be followed?
Yeah, there's principles in Leviticus, sure. Jesus references those, yeah.
Is it okay to not follow some of them? Is it okay to follow some of them?
Well, Jesus, being the one that gave Leviticus as the law, would have the ability to decide how it's interpreted, so yes.
Are there things in the Bible that you are supposed to do that you don't?
There are temporary ceremonial commands that are fulfilled. So you're talking about like sacrifice animals, sure. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't? If the principle is that Jesus gave the law and he says how it's exercised and fulfilled, that's not inconsistent. What I don't understand is there are Christians that don't eat meat on Fridays. That's just a fasting position that Catholics do. Yeah. Is that right or wrong? Well, what does that have to do with Leviticus? I'm now moving forward and asking you about a specific thing I don't understand. That there are Catholics, they don't eat meat on Fridays. Is that not so again, I think you don't view Catholics as coherent. Right. That is, we'll end the argument there. You view your religious structure as the coherent structure and other structures are incoherent. Okay, I disagree. And we are allowed to disagree that we have two different moral religious worldviews, and that is the inherent disagreement. So in my moral worldview, I believe there is a basis in private ownership because if you are to fulfill God's will of having children, having families, you need a way to control your resources so that you can do that without it being taken from you. I actually think we agree on that point. I do, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know why you were arguing when we had completely agreed on that, other than to say I'm not a Christian. Because it's not just a question of having the right position, but what are the good reasons for? That's arguing for the sake of arguing. No, it's not. That's what epistemology is. Let's go talk about Trump's State of the Union and CNN, and it was fun debating, though. I appreciate it. Fun.
Did you know what started that all?
What?
Cuba.
A Levi Strauss comment.
Levi Strauss in Cuba.
A Levi Strauss comment.
Company towns, communism, and I'm sure it'll be an entertaining clip for so many people. But let's talk about